Hey all, I jumped into a race this past weekend, a 15K, so I thought it'd be a great time to share about that as well as a marathon training update. I had that full series I did before my Sun Valley Marathon at the end of June, which I'll link up here in case you didn't get a chance to check that out. And then just took a break and wasn't training for anything for a little while. Just got a little bit burnt out from marathon training. I'd been training for like 6 months. Long story of why it was so long. I wouldn't typically do that, but I share that in those videos. And so I just needed a little bit of break from that. But I am back to training for something, and I'm always interested to find out what you guys are up to, so definitely share in the comments below what you are training for, or if you're not training for anything right now, just what you've been loving about running, especially like running in this fall weather, right? I know I love that. I'm sure that you guys do too. It's the perfect time of year. All right, so I'm going to share a little bit about the race that I ran this past weekend, the Hot Chocolate 15K. But before I get into that, just want to share what I'm doing with my marathon training for the California International Marathon. So that is in Sacramento, California, December 5th. So I have been training for a while. I'm about midway through. I started training formally about mid-August, although I had a really good base before that. I took a week off after Sun Valley completely, which I highly recommend taking full time off after marathon just to let your body recover. And then after that, I just kind of slowly started working my way back up to where I was ready to go in terms of training for another marathon again, which was definitely a big mind shift having to get back into it after taking a little bit of a break. But it's been going really, really well. And so at this point, I am about 8.5 weeks out from the race, and my longest run has been 18 miles. So I usually follow a schedule of going up a couple weeks and then down a week. And just throwing this race in this past week has changed things up a little bit, but I typically am running 6 days a week, including Orange Theory 1 to 2 times a week, which that's basically this time around what I've been using as my speed and my strength. And I have not been as rigid about my training as I have in the past, but definitely still following that 6-day routine. I have another video about my 6-day per week marathon training that I do, so I won't go into it too much here, but lots and lots of easy running, which I'm gonna let you know how this race went and how I think a lot of that easy running really carried over into what happened on race day. If you guys have any questions about that particular training and what I'm doing right now, drop them below. I would be happy to answer them. Just enjoying the process right now. I have an athlete that I coach that's running CIM as well, and so that's really exciting. All right, so the race that I ran this past weekend was the Hot Chocolate 15K, which is why I'm wearing this jacket right now. And honestly, it is not really cold enough to be wearing it out here right now, but I just wanted to sport it. And honestly, that's one of the really cool things about this race is the gear that they give. And so I had no plans to be running a 15K whatsoever. The weekend before, I got an email. I mean, I'm sure I'd been getting emails from them, but I'd always heard really great things about this race. I got the email and I'm like, maybe I should run this 15K next weekend. Like, I love fall races. I try not to be so rigid about my training because in the past there's no way I would have just thrown a race in randomly like that. But I thought the timing would be fine in terms of with my marathon and still being, you know, so far out from that. So I went ahead and registered just a few days before, very last minute, and kind of reworked my schedule so that I could at least have a couple days of getting my legs fresh beforehand. Although my 18 miler, the longest run of this training block, was the Wednesday before, and then the race was on Sunday. So it definitely wasn't a tapered race whatsoever. And I kind of considered that when I was making a goal for the race as well. And then I think I did an easy run that Thursday, took Friday off completely, and then I always like to do a shakeout run the day before. So that was really, really easy. I just did like 1.5 to 2 miles of like jogging and walking, and then I did a few strides at the end just to kind of get my legs turning over fast to get ready for the next day. I was drinking lots of water that day, really good nutrition the day before, and foam rolling as well. Just giving my legs a little bit more love considering the fact that I had lots and lots of miles beforehand, which I wouldn't normally do. And then race day came. It was such a gorgeous day, and it was in Washington Park, Colorado, which if you guys have never been to that area, it's just absolutely gorgeous in Denver. And I in the morning went and I drove separately from my family, but they joined me a little bit later. But I always do a little bit of a warm up. I have a lot of people ask me this if I do this. So yes, I did about a half a mile. Again, it's just really a combination of like walking, jogging, and then some strides. So my race strategy going into this was I wanted a negative split for sure, and I just was considering it in 3 chunks. And so it being a 15K, which is 9.3 miles, it's really easy to think about it in 3 parts. Just your first 5K, your middle 5K, and then that last 5K where you're ready to push it. And because I wanted a negative split, really a pacing strategy very similar to what I talked about in my last video about marathon pacing, which I'll link that up here in case you are have a marathon coming up and want to check that out. But really just easing into it and taking those first couple miles slower than my planned pace, knowing that I would have plenty of time to make it up later. So I really was focusing on going about 10 seconds slower than what my goal pace was. And I was really just trying to do about 7:45 pace. Last year I ran a half marathon at 7:47 pace. And so I was like, I know I can do faster than that, but just throwing this right in the middle of a big training block, I'm not really sure how it's going to go. So definitely kind of conservative there. And then my first mile really didn't go the way that I was planning to. I just felt really, really good. I tried not to get caught up in the crowd whatsoever. I really was just doing my own thing, but I did slow down when I saw I was running about like 7:20. I slowed that down. I think my first mile was about 7:35. And then with the goal in mind of doing 7:45, I'm like, okay, I need to slow this down. So I did slow down my next mile. Number 2 mile to about 7:45, and I kind of just gauged from there how I was feeling, and I did end up negative splitting the race. So the first half was slower than the second half, and I really just focused on in that middle 5K, just increasing a little bit and just gauging where I thought I would be at for the end of the race. And by the time I got into the end of that 10K, I was still feeling really, really good. There was like one kind of semi big hill. I mean, Denver's pretty flat where we were running, but semi big hill. And that was my, I think that was also my slowest mile. That and the second mile were my slowest mile. And then from there, I'm just like, it's go time. And I was really careful not to put too much in like the 7th mile, you know, because there's still plenty of time to go. But then my second to last mile was my fastest mile. And I really, really turned up the pace and just was feeling really, really good. And in that moment in time, that is when I was like, oh my gosh, I can feel all of this new fitness. And I've really been focusing on low heart rate when I've been running and running slow like I'm supposed to. Not saying I'm gonna run slow, but actually doing it. And I could totally feel the fitness. So even when my legs were tired from having a lot of miles on my feet earlier, I could just feel that fitness coming through. And I just was reminded why I coach this way and why I know it's so important to have that aerobic endurance, because races like a 15K or a marathon, they are almost all aerobic, and that anaerobic part is coming late in those race miles when you're really pushing hard and there's just not a lot of it. And so looking back, I feel like I could have that last full mile pushed it a little bit harder. I always do this thing, and let me know if you are similar, but I will like our minds, what they do to us, it's so annoying, but I start to be like, oh, well, I could even go a minute slower for this mile and I'll still get my goal, you know, because I wanted to do 7:45s and I was on track for doing much better than that. But then your mind starts to play tricks on you, like as you get to really, really tired. And my mind does that to me all the time in a marathon. Like, oh, like when I wanted to get a BQ 3:40, even though I was on track for faster a couple years ago, oh, well, it's okay if you walked for just a couple minutes, like you could, and then start running, like you could still get your 3:40, which is, that's when you really have to have those mantras where you're telling your mind no and turning off those dark thoughts that are trying to creep in. And that was definitely happening to me. But just looking back on how fast I did like that last 0.2 miles, I think it was like, I don't know, mid 6s or something like that, mid to high 6s. I feel like I could have pushed it that like last full mile, but that's okay. I was really, really happy with the time. I ended up getting a 1:08:48, and really halfway through the race is when I was like, I think I can do under 1:10. And I do think the course was just a tad short. So my watch was showing 9.15. but you never know. But my Garmin is usually really accurate, so it was probably just a tad short, but I still, even if it would have been like the full 9.3 on my watch, then it would have still been under 110 at the pace that I was going. So I was super, super excited about that. I got third place in my age group, and with it being a pretty big field size, I just was ecstatic about that. And honestly, more than anything, just feeling great, having a great day, seeing running friends after. My family was there cheering me on. My kids are my, little supporters and my biggest fans, and I couldn't ask for anything more, honestly. And then at the end, that's the great thing and why I think people just really love this race, and I've heard so many good things about it. By the way, check it out, see if it's in your area, because there's like 20 across the US. So it's not just in Denver. They're all over, and they have a 5K as well if you're interested in that. But very, very nice medal that we got. It's really cute. And then they were handing out hot chocolate to my kids and stuff, and that was fun. And then you get this really yummy bowl of like hot chocolate and chocolate fondue and all things to dip, and just really fun. So that's what's been going on with me, and I will continue to update you guys with my marathon training as it continues. I'll keep on enjoying this fall weather running. I hope you do the same, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.